The topic for discussion is production agriculture requires a lot of capital. Young farmers and ranchers face challenges gaining access to the capital they need to start or grow their operations. What tools are currently available and what new programs could be introduced to help young people access financial resources and make sound financial decisions to run their farms and ranches? Contestants, please begin with your opening statements in random order. Go ahead, start notes, yeah. Go ahead. It's ready.
Oh, okay. Well, breakfast was delicious. But last year about this time, I was eating crow as a young couple sat down at my district table and started to introduce themselves. And I said, "Ooh, I don't recognize you. I'm not sure this is your right table." And that's when I met the Bernards, a first-generation family striking it out on their own as an agriculturalist. With a new baby on the way, I'm excited to discuss everything from cultivating their growth, FSAs, and how Farm Bureau can partner with them to ensure their future success.
Today, the average age of the U.S. farmer is 58 years old, with 1/3 of all farmers being over 60. That provides a great opportunity for young agriculturalists to get involved in agriculture. With that, though, comes challenges to finance, to buy, and grow their operations. And today I look forward to the opportunity to talk about the programs that are currently available for all farmers, but are also new ideas to help those young farmers get involved in agriculture.
Nearly 80% of young farmers consider themselves first-generation farmers. This means that a large portion of our next generation of farmers struggles to meet the conventional loan requirements, with typically low equity, limited farm histories, as well as on the other side, historically high expenses, including land and equipment. I look forward to discussing creative and existing solutions to ensure that young farmers have access to funding.
There are numerous barriers to entry in agriculture, but the lack of capital, whether it's financial, social, or intellectual, is one of the greatest facing our young agriculturalists today. I'm invested this morning in exploring what current tools and new programs are on the horizon to help our young farmers and ranchers improve, start, and expand their operations so that they too can make a life abundant sow for themselves as well as others.
Contestants, you may now begin the discussion.
So, great morning. I'm excited to talk about this topic with you guys today. The reason why I'm super passionate about this topic is because I was actually able to start my operation using a great program that's out there. And I'd like to start there talking about the ones that are currently there and then move on to maybe some options of some new ones that we could come up with. But the first one being the FSA Beginning Farmer Loan Program is a great opportunity that offers flexibility for farmers but also poses some challenges. The best part is that you can get that with zero down, but some of the challenges are the paperwork and then also being able to have the experience up front, that 3 years of required experience to continue moving forward. So I would love to hear your guys' ideas of what we can do to push and help with Farm Bureau setting up to help new farmers be able to qualify for some of those.
I think that's a really great program to start off with, Matt, and I appreciate the detail you shared as well of that program. And I think one of the biggest barriers and challenges surrounding financial programs like this FSA Beginning Loan and others that exist out there is that experience component that is necessary, because someone may want to go start their own operation and they have these great goals and ideas, they have the business plan written, but they don't have that experience yet. And that can be really hard, especially from someone who doesn't already have an agricultural background. And I've even heard stories too of people who have worked on the family operation, but then that hasn't counted for whatever reason. So I'm curious if any of you ladies have any comments on that or ideas on how we can make sure people know that experience is needed when they embark in these new adventures, and what ways Farm Bureau can assist in providing those experiences.
Experience is key, and I think building on that, another barrier that experience can speak to is the time commitment. So if you're not buying an already established farm, just thinking about what are the inputs, and that's across agriculture. Whether you're an orchardist and the first thing you have to do is fumigate and then put the trees, and then hopefully they grow, and then you've got a crop one day. And so with experience, it helps identify, what are your expectations? How can we set those expectations for future and entering growers? And then from there, how can we expand? And then also, once we have our capital and once we have our expectations set, what do we do with it when we get to that point?
Yeah, I think you guys all brought up some great points in terms of looking at some of those issues with FSA funding. And I would elaborate some of the other issues I've really heard about that is, the ability to get the correct amount of funding, right? It's, I work as an appraiser, so I see land values on a regular basis. And what I see is that land values continue to grow and continue to be a limited resource, and a lot of the times those funding programs aren't adequately caught up with the current land value trends, because as a young farmer, sometimes you get these opportunities to go in and purchase land, but maybe, the time commitment required to go through an FSA loan, it usually takes at least 60 days to get through that. Sometimes there's somebody else on the back end that's another farmer nearby that can offer cash behind that. And that's really hard to compete with. Auctions are basically not an option if you're going to go through FSA financing, unless you can have, say, a relative. But as I discussed in my opening, a large portion of these young farmers may or may not actually have family in the business to be able to lean on for equity or other purposes to attain the land. And so I think those are some of those struggles because, working with a government agency, they're kind of never really an efficient operation. It's always the long way to do things. So I think kind of leading what you guys said, one of the big challenges I thought you talked about there was talking about how that there is, having experience is a great piece of that, right? And so that kind of leads me into the next part of this is why I think, some of the opportunities lie in some sort of mentorship programs. Happens to be that I do work for Farm Credit, and they do offer some mentorship programs, which is a great tool to partner with that, to be able to bring in that experience to a lot of these people who don't necessarily have, that older generation on the farm to discuss with. I guess kind of what are your guys' ideas and kind of expanding these programs or creating new outside of just like a mentorship type program?
Go ahead.
I think you hit the nail on the head there with mentorship, and I believe that's a really important key piece in this issue in building social capital for young people. You also identified a challenge that I know is a wicked problem, and that's the rising cost of land and land availability. Especially in West Michigan, it is a battle out there right now, trying to find farmland that's available to purchase. And one program that currently exists that I'm excited about is the My Linking program. And between Ottawa and Washtenaw counties, they're identifying folks that want to pass down their farm to the next generation, want to keep it a farm, and provide that mentorship for them as well. And not only does it identify farmland that is available for sale that may not be on the commercial market yet, it also identifies if that person is willing to be that social support and be that mentor for them, which is really, really key. We've seen it as well. I work for the Michigan Sheep Producers Association, and we have a mentorship program as well for anyone who would like to, whether a member or not. We want them to get involved in our industry. So making it as approachable as possible, no fees, no mandatory meetings, but connecting them with an individual who is going through similar process or who has gone through similar things, whether it's the same breed or the similar type of operation. We want to connect those people so that they can build those relationships and then hopefully share some of that information, whether it's financial or not, to make them successful in their operations in the future. So there's a lot of current programs that I think are available and people should be taking advantage of, but I'm really curious, in your experiences with Farm Bureau, have your county levels or district levels done anything on the new end of things to connect young farmers with mentors locally to face any of these challenges?
There are a ton of opportunities through Farm Bureau. An example in Wexford County, which I just recently moved to. I stepped into an open position. There was previously there was no young farmer program. So it is ripe with opportunity there. And so stepping into that position, really finding those key contacts, but also looking at where can we capitalize on what our members are already doing really great. And so focusing on the skills that we have and how are those transferable. So I had the opportunity of talking with a young lady who she said she was from the dairy industry, and now she stepped into credit analyzing. And that's not what she studied, but because of her other transferable skills, she's the perfect person in that position. And I think one of the solutions we can really drive towards, and what we're working on in Wexford, is putting the right people in the right places to make those sound decisions. And building on that mentorship piece, MSU also has a mentorship program, which is awesome, but there's always more mentees than there are mentors. So future building, identifying those folks and empowering them to be that contact. But I wanted to transition and talk a little bit. We've talked about capital, we've talked about accessibility and some of the programs that are out there, but I also want to talk about, what do we do when we get to that place when we get our loan and we're in the heat of season? Who do you call? For me, it's my mom. But when you're working with your folks all day, every day on the family farm, or for those folks who don't have families working with them, who do you call? And I think that's a place that Farm Bureau can really open up avenues and identifying those skills that folks have and creating a catalog where you can just pull up your phone, maybe on the app, identify that person and give them a quick call. When you don't have that time to go through a program or set an appointment with a counselor or anything like that, when you're in the heat of the season, who can you call? And that's an area that we can identify solutions.
So I agree completely. That we had a conversation about yesterday, creating within our districts or at the state level a directory of sorts that we can have people that share a like mind or in the same area of us, that we run into those issues. We can go to them and ask questions to either improve upon our operation or just need some advice from some more experienced operators. So it kind of morphs all of that together, the mentorship piece into that experience tracker. But I kind of want to go back because we kind of skipped right over the experience part. So there's such a hard thing when we get the experience that are needed for these loans or the capital. One of the things that people forget about is there are things like microloans through the FSA that you do not need the years of experience to help start up an operation. It's a smaller amount, but it is a way for somebody to get started, build their operation in a hobby farm set, and then when they get those 3-5 years of experience, then they can morph into that larger production. Do you guys know of any other loans that could help them get that experience without buying an entire operation?
I don't know of any right off the bat, but what I think we're starting to learn as we keep bringing up these different loan opportunities is there is not a lot of accessibility or promotion of these tools out there, especially within agriculture. We're in the know. We know who to go to. If we have these questions, we know what FSA is. But if we don't come from a traditional agriculture background, or if I don't have these mentors in my corner, I am not going to know about that. I didn't know about those microloans even today. So I think part of our solution today should be driving towards promoting these programs more, whether, as a bureaucracy, websites get messy and hard to manage, and I understand that, but whether it's making those more accessible or on Farm Bureau's website, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I remember watching a video from the USDA even, and it mentioned that a young couple had gone to their local bank to get a loan, and they got denied, but their bank told them about the FSA programs, and that young couple didn't even know about them themselves. So the USDA has identified this as a problem, that people don't know that these programs exist, and I think that's something we need to keep in the back of our minds as we move forward driving toward a solution this morning.
And Sam, I really see this as an opportunity for Farm Bureau to get involved, even if we think about at our local level. If people that have been through these programs before put on a session or a training to invite those that are looking to get into it, not only can they help them understand and navigate the loan programs that are out there, but they can also be a mentor to help them fill out the paperwork. Because as you had said earlier, Beth, one of the hardest things with governmental things is the bureaucracy, the paperwork. And a lot of the papers you're looking at and a lot of new producers don't understand what a lot of these things mean. So if we have somebody that can get them into that, they can help them through that process.
Yeah, I think you're going right where I was going to head with that is the fact that, a lot of that help would be assistance with the paperwork, getting to know what's the best way to fill out those forms to get the funding. You mentioned some of the things that maybe there's some other programs out there. I would say a lot of young farmers, myself included, have some sort of interest and work in some sort of a niche market. So we do direct marketing in our farm, and I know some of you do some of that as well. And so there are some other programs that are more directly grants that are available, but if anyone's familiar with grant writing, from what I understand, it's quite a complicated process. Once again, an unknown and not well marketed either, an unknown, right? And so that's one of those things that would be, once again, if you can get access to understanding where you can find dollars to do exactly what you're trying to accomplish, because maybe it is something more on the niche, direct-to-consumer type side, and there may be some additional funding revenues that you can pursue that even our grants, which are better than loans in some aspects, because now you're just getting funding that you don't have to repay. But kind of moving from that a little bit, I think we've kind of talked a lot about what's out there and maybe trying to make those systems better. But for me, I think there's some ideas that maybe we haven't dove into in terms of new things that could be potentially available. So to me, one of the things that we talked about was the difficulty of getting equity and getting the experience to get those loans, right? And so one of the things that came to mind for me is that, if you are a young farmer and you're willing to do the work to put together a business loan or a business proposal, maybe that can replace some of that experience. If you can analyze your future farming operation, what you're looking to do, detail that out and look at, the best case, the worst case scenario, and bring that proposal with you to get a loan, I feel like that should have some value, right? You've analyzed your situation. You maybe don't have the years of experience necessary. You maybe don't have a lot of the things that make you easy to lend to, but you may come to the table saying, here, I've given this a lot of thought. I've looked at how this can go well, how this can go bad, and how I can make money. And I think that gives some more opportunity to a lot of young farmers who maybe don't have access to those other items, but have really great, really well thought out ideas. And I think that also, that goes with how you run after it, right? You were talking about who you reach out to. Now, if you have someone that you can reach out to set up a business plan and to really work through that, whether that be with your lender or with someone that's in the industry with you, to me, that's something that's, you can really maybe actually turn profit and turn this into a long-term venture, right? Because, the scary part about being a young farmer is you can't just, go out and do something because you feel it feels good inside unless you're doing it as a hobby and you have a full-time income. Because at the end of the day, anything's a hobby if you're not making money. And so I think that, to me, like having a solid business plan should be an item that can help you get funding. Any other thoughts on new ideas?
So, to play off of what you were saying, Beth, one of the biggest things that I think that we as Farm Bureau can help with to help that is the insured loan side. So through policy, making sure that in the Farm Bill, there is coverage through to make sure other lenders are willing to invest into a future farm, because the volatility of the industry makes it hard for them to be willing to invest or loan the money out for these new producers that don't have the experience, and that's part of it. So if we can find a way to insure and cover these loans in case something happens, then we will be more likely to get more involvement and more other financial institutions able to help these other people. What do you think?
Yeah, so, we've talked about mentorship, we've talked about expertise and access, we've talked about building up a directory, and other programs that are working really well. So we have, similarly to what you were talking about, we've had workshops where you go in, you sit down. Last year, I believe it was Greenstone, and they walked you through a business plan and how do you create it and what are those questions you have. And so I sat in that workshop, I filled it all out, and I was so excited, and I went home to Dad and I said, here's what we're gonna do. And he said, sit down. So How can we take that once we have these opportunities, and we have these growth, and we have these exciting new ideas? How can we take that and really make that impactful? And that's having those key contacts back at home, and then also a way that you can explore how can you implement that and bringing on additional folks to the farm. So another area we could do, building off workshops, another solution is to get those folks with different perspectives, same values, new ideas, actually onto your farm, and pushing past policy. A way we can do that is actually bringing folks from other districts. And what we're working in District 9, and actually it's on the policy for that the delegates will be voting on, is something similar to a bus tour. Focus on all levels of advocacy, legislators, but then also bringing folks from the industry who can have that unique perspective on what we're doing. And that's a really key piece that I think we can push forward.
Maddie, I really appreciate you sharing your experience in writing your business plan and how your family reacted to that. And I think that's a really important thing for us to remember is with that mentorship piece, it needs to be consistent all the way throughout. And I currently teach an agribusiness class where students spend the whole semester writing a business plan for an agricultural business. And one of the key components of that to make it successful so that they don't bring it to the bank and they just shoot it down right away is they have those mentors along the way. And then at the end of the semester, it's being reviewed by a panel of judges. But for them, it's feedback givers. And I think that's really key component to Beth's idea of having these business plans as count as experience. They need to be almost accredited in a way. They need to be proofed by a group of individuals, and maybe that's by the County Farm Bureau. Maybe they review these things and there's one per county each year or something like that. But I think that's a key component to these business plans. But I also think we need to be aware that people's intellectual capital and understanding of business terminology and balance sheets and debt to equity ratios, not everybody has that knowledge even after graduating high school. And finally, we have in the legislature that personal finance is required, but business finance, is not in that curriculum yet. And I think that's something we could investigate in policy in the future, potentially on the delegate floor, as Maddie stated, or in other avenues, just at our local county level with our P&E committees, bringing in those folks to high schools, not necessarily K through 5, but for anybody who wants to go into agriculture, who wants to start their own business, connect those people with those students. Every student in the state of Michigan has an educational development plan that says what they want to do after they graduate. We know who these people are and what they want to do. And if we can connect with these schools and identify those students and give them the resources and give them the mentorship, don't wait for them to come to us because they're not going to. Connect with them first. I think there is a lot of success in their future.
And Sam, go ahead.
Go ahead, Beth. Jeez. So I think we did a great job of saying, I think it really is important that Farm Bureau helps facilitate these connections, right? It's a great opportunity bringing people from all walks of life, all different districts, all different ag backgrounds, all different experiences in one place, a great resource for someone who wants to get into farming. I think we just also need to consider that, there are, like Matt said in his opening, a large portion of farmers that are reaching retirement ages. And so it's really, I think, about connecting those farmers that are getting out of the business, and a lot of them don't have the next generation that wants to take over, as it is a smaller portion, and making sure that those farmers are connecting with people that want to get into the business. And hopefully some of them have a bit more of a mentality to say, hey, maybe I'm going to rent this to you at a reduced rate. Like there's a farm out in Iowa that's basically doing that. They take applications and they offer up their farm for rental to young beginning farmers at a reduced rate. So I think there's some stuff outside of the lending that we really didn't get a chance to touch on right now. But I think it's really, like you guys said, we kind of concluded that it's about all those connections, right? And connecting those people with the people that want to get into the business.
Exactly.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, contestants. You now have 1 minute to prepare your closing statement. Pens down. Contestants, you may begin with your closing statements in random order.
Well, thank you everyone for a really great discussion. We covered a lot of ground, coming out hitting with those powerful facts about the average farmer being 58 years old to 80% of farmers starting out their new operation, and then also hitting those key concepts like social capital and expertise. And we sort of took a three-pronged approach to solutions, and I think that can be encompassed in the theme of linking. So that's creating a mentorship program where folks can be linked to our key contacts, building out a directory, who knows what and who can I access, and then following that up with, outside of just lending capital access, how are we proofing what we're working on and where are we building for the future? And Farm Bureau is a key piece there. Thank you.
Today, we had an amazing conversation. We talked about all the great programs that are available, like FSA, succession programs within Sam's County, mentorship opportunities that Beth had mentioned, and then talking about ways that we as Farm Bureau members can continue to help young farmers find these opportunities and continue moving forward. And I look forward to being able to work within my county and as a State Farm Bureau member to continue helping new farmers. And I will go back and I would love to set up a mentorship program to help new and young farmers fill out the paperwork to do an FSA loan. Going through it myself, I struggled very, very diligently on my own with very little help, and it took 6 or 7 months to complete the process because there weren't those opportunities out there for help, and I would love to be that for the future generation.
I think we had a great conversation discussing the ways that we as young farmers are affected by access funding here as young farmers. I think it was kind of 3 different things we really addressed. We addressed the policy issues of it, right? We need to make sure that we are addressing those in the Farm Bill and that we continue to have access to those FSA programs, to those FSA dollars, and other grants and funding opportunities. It's also the idea that maybe there's new creative ways to access funding that maybe don't meet traditional loan requirements, looking at things a little bit differently from a young farmer perspective. And finally, working with mentors and working with other individuals that are more experienced to help young farmers gain that experience and access to the market. But at the end of the day, I think it's all about those connections, right? I look forward to helping Farm Bureau build more opportunities for networking and connections to continue to give young farmers opportunities to get access to farms and land and funding.
Whether it's through identifying mentors and building our social capital through current programs or new ones on the horizon, there are a lot of opportunities for our young farmers and ranchers today. Additionally, we have identified that we can promote our FSA loans, as Matt mentioned, and the different mini grant programs that are out there even more with our new and emerging producers. I am also excited to bring back some ideas that we discussed, such as our business planning workshops to build greater social capital, but also hopefully at the end of the day, bring that financial capital to young producers so that they can be successful in starting and expanding their current operations.
Thank you.